Hello, Mary here,
Kathy.
and we are with Pearls of the Soul. But Kathy and I have decided that we're going to start doing podcasts called Magic Chatter by Crohn's Mary and Cathy. And what that is we're old. We are that generation now where we are the old uh,
Crohn's.
fogies, the old crones.
I know when I was young, I thought, I'm attracted to witches. I love them. And I would see the
That's good.
crone
That's
thing.
good.
Yeah, I would see the crone, like this maiden crone, whatever. They have
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
three of them
the maiden, the mother, and then
and the
the
crone.
elder.
And I thought, I'll never be a crone. And here we are.
Here we are. I know. I never thought I'd be married to anybody as old as my husband.
That's
My
right.
husband's 70, and I'm just like, holy crap. I didn't think I'd ever be married to anybody. But you know what? I never thought I'd be this age either. And my daughter just turns 50 here in May, and my granddaughter is 25. And I think, whoa, I guess I'm glad I'm not 75, the 25, 50, 75.
But
I'm
don't
only
you feel
68,
in your
but
head that you're not that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like if I had to pick a date from this clouds, it'd be 43 years old.
I know I'd
I
say
feel
that.
43, and I'm thinking that must have been when I felt really, really super great in my life, maybe, and that's why it's sticking. I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know when 43 was. It was 20 years ago, but I got to tell you a story, Kathy. My husband's out of town right now, and as always, Kathy and I are never scripted, so we never know what's going to fall out of our mouths. We start going east and go west. So, but my husband's out of town, and he's in California, and he's the cook.
Mm-hmm.
And needless to say, I've been hungry since he's been gone. So today, I actually attempted to cook,
Uh-huh.
and my friend's here with me, and so I told her we'd make some eggs and my husband made like a egg, what's it called, an egg sandwich where you put the eggs and the cheese and the
Oh, and the
bacon in a
bacon.
croissant.
Yeah.
And so I attempted to make one this morning. Needless to say, if anybody's seen Nailed It, that's what it looked like. It was pretty bad. But a piece of grease popped into my eye. I had on
Ouch.
my glasses even, and I thought, how did that grease get in my eye? And I just thought, okay, that's it. God's just saying you're not meant to
Don't
cook.
cook. Yeah.
So I reheat. I don't cook. I reheat. So, whoever comes to my house has to either cook or we eat out because today was proof in the pudding that I'm just not a
Just
cook, and
don't
I
do
can't wait for
it.
my husband to get home and because I'm hungry.
I know.
I'm
I hear
hungry.
you. I know that. Yeah.
Anyway, so Dan cooks, doesn't he? Isn't
Dan
Dan
is
the
our
cook?
cook. He is
Yeah.
our cook. And when he's gone, I'll go buy several like Marie Calendar type dinners and I
Oh,
just make them. And I can cook, but I don't see the point of,
one person.
yeah, one
Yeah,
person. Why are
yeah.
you cooking for one person?
Yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, cooking is an issue, but I guess we have to eat to survive. But anyway, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I don't know, being our intuition or depression or both.
You know what? I want to talk about. I ask you what you want to talk about, then I switch it to me.
Yeah, I
Does
want
that
to
make
talk
me a
about
narcissist? I want to
yes,
talk about.
I'm itching my back, people. Okay.
um, uh, you know what? I want to talk about intuition, spirituality, because I've been studying with my master in Malaysia, and I told Kathy I was up yesterday. I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We had a 3 hour class, and because of time changes and his time change, I was up at 10 o'clock last night in another class and up till 3 o'clock,
Hmm.
and I am just like tired. But as we talked about spirituality, and he compared it to Google,
Uh-huh.
that our intuition and our spirituality is like Google. We're just one great big lightning rod, and all of the information we need is there. All we have to do is close our eyes and just ask for it.
Hmm.
And Kathy and I both work a lot from intuition, and Kathy, of course, is a medical intuitive. And I've had classes in it, but I feel like she's probably a little more versed on the medical aspects of the body versus my intuitional aspects. And so, Kathy, let's talk about that. Are you up for that?
Yep, let's
Can you
go.
do that without a
Hmm.
script? Are we?
Yeah.
Am I catching you off guard? Tell me, just tell. Why don't you tell them just talk about your
Okay.
intuitive. I know in the prison you had a lot of things. She
So
wasn't in prison. She was a guard or a
I
nurse
was a
or.
nurse in the prison, but for that job, I had to go through the police academy. And one thing about that job is you'd come one day and like my hackles on my back would just be up. I knew today was
Oh,
bad, or something. Um, and I do think I've always been intuitive, but that job heightened my intuition because you had to be careful. Like you had to, it could be the most pleasant place or it could be a hellacious scare. And so, and you didn't know what day that was going to be.
yeah. It was kind of like you always walked into an abusive home, huh?
Right. Yeah.
When you know that, children and anybody who's been abused, they do have that heightened sense of awareness, that sense of fear, I think
Yeah.
is what it's called. And so walking into that every day must be, you've got to have a lot of PTSD from that,
Well, and
right?
I do, but you know what was so weird about that was that during the time that I worked there, I didn't have a lot of PTSD. When I retired is when it kicked in. So it must have been that somewhere in my brain, my Google download.
Yeah, your collective consciousness.
I couldn't have the PTSD yet because
Right,
I needed to be alert and aware and
right.
on going on. But you know, when I decided to retire, like 9 months before I retired, it's like the PTSD started kicking in. And I think somewhere in my brain, I knew I didn't have to do this much longer. And
Yeah,
so
so it was letting down
it
its
was
guard.
starting to let it
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Well, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I
No,
interrupted
that's
you. I
fine.
shouldn't have. I shouldn't have interrupted your thought.
But I was a nurse, and there was many opportunities, which this has nothing to do with the prison. I'm sure any other medical person, you don't have to be medical. We've all done this with your kids, where you go, there's something wrong. And you may even go to the doctor and he's like, whatever, there's nothing wrong. And you start fighting for your child. And I remember many times in my nursing career where that occurred. But the one thing that I do think maybe I had an advantage over is that I could sort of pinpoint what was wrong,
Hmm.
like because of my medical background. And so I would be able to pinpoint, what was wrong. But there was opportunities where there was no symptoms and I would just stand in front of the person and they'd be like telling me things and I would think you're having a heart attack or you're having, a gallbladder attack or you're having an appendectomy issue or something. And we had one doctor where I would tell him those things and he'd become angry at me. And then there was another doctor that was like, okay, well, do what you want because you're
You're going
usually
to
right.
anyway.
I know. It's like you're usually right. But one specific time, I had a guy that was having a cardiac arrest and no symptoms, but he came down and he said, I don't feel right. And you could see in his face all was not well, right?
Mhm.
But I couldn't pinpoint it, but I was going to let him go out of the office and I said, let me just do an EKG on you because I had this feeling like it was more like protect yourself, Cathy. That's what it
Oh
was, right?
wow.
And I did an EKG on him and he was in full blown cardiac arrest.
Oh my goodness.
Now, sometime I've heard of this where it's called a silent heart attack and they really don't know what's happening. They just feel off. But you can read that on the EKG, and he
Oh
was
wow.
in that.
See, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
And
Wow.
so I read that on the EKG, and we went down to the doctor. And this particular time, it was the doctor who just wanted whatever. And he was not the one that would go, Cathy, yeah, do what you need to do. It was the other one that, I'm the doctor, you're the nurse, don't tell me what's going on.
I'm the man. You're the woman.
Yeah. And I remember saying,
Fetch my coffee, woman.
I said, he's in cardiac arrest. And he just started ripping me a new one. And I remember looking at him and saying, I don't care what you do. I'm going to go chart what I know. And I
Yeah.
handed him the
Good for you.
EKG. And he comes running behind me, Cathy, Cathy. And, like, yeah.
Like a puppy.
Yeah. You
I screwed up.
call the hospital, do this, do that, and so, and we've all had this.
Yeah.
You've done this
Yeah.
with your kids, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Well, we go back to what we talked about, in our book, the claircognizance and the clairsentience, where we feel it, we know it, we can't explain it, It's just there and it's happening, and it's so ingrained in our core that you can't ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And the harder you try to ignore it, the more your body will keep talking to you and shifting into that. I always call it the knock knock joke mode, because it's literally knocking at your head to pay attention. And that's what spirituality is. It's about paying attention and becoming mindful of who we are and our connection to our source. And religion comes into when you practice that spirituality with people of like minds.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with religion. I don't care what anybody says. It was set up for the good of some, and some people have taken it and trashed it and made it have a bad name. But for the most part, when people are coming together for the good of all, and feeling that energy and that connection and that mindfulness, how can that be bad?
It isn't bad. And we've talked about this before. We all have a different language for this. And I think where intuition is ignored, because we all have it, when you start having that and you don't know what it is, and maybe someone subdues you, well, it's nothing, relax, you're just whatever. I'm willing to bank that anxiety is intuition all the way around.
Absolutely.
When you've got someone that's swimming in tons of anxiety, they are intuitive and they've not learned to identify it.
Yeah, they're not paying attention to what their body is trying to
tell them,
to bring forth for them. And animals are amazing. You know how I feel about the animal world, and you do too. Their instincts are so high, and they just function on instinct, and we function on what's supposed to be called reasoning. And as I watch animals and people, it's like it's so obvious that the animal world has it totally a leg up, I feel like, on the human race, because I have a book called, Wisdom of the Eagle, something of the Eagle, Wisdom of the Wolf. And it talks about the hierarchy of the wolf, and, the alpha, the beta, and then the pack in between, and the omega. And the omega, who is the grunt, who gets beat up, picked on the most, ends up eventually leaving the pack and starting up his own pack, because he's learned how to survive by himself. And it's really kind of a cool story. And as an omega, they're either killed or they leave and become their own pack member. And people, as you watch people, and there's so much greed that goes out there sometimes, that anger, hate, greed, grudges, it's part of that seven deadly sins.
Yeah.
And you just really have to hook back into that spiritual part to remember who we are and where we came from, and not let this surrounding of reasoning or somebody other's opinion get to you, and come back and trust that intuition. And going back, that's why I love the animals, because when I got into that place of darkness, and it was dark, I talk about it in one of the books, it was pretty dark. The animals is what brought me back. It wasn't, it was the animals. I went into some Native American drumming and shamanism, and the animals literally spoke to me in the head. The deer told me to rest, and the bear told me to be courageous, and the wolf told me to pack up with family and friends, and the raven showed me the line of the veil between spiritual and the earth. And then I was able to finally get into a vision where Jesus showed up, and he sat on the rock among the animals. And Jesus has always been one of my guides from when I was just little. I always saw visions of him, and still do. And when he showed up, all of a sudden it just brought it all together. And for me, and that's why when somebody says, well, you're not religious, you say you're spiritual, swear like a sailor, it's kind of like, my relationship with Jesus and God is mine, and nobody gets to judge that.
And God created us, and I have a mouth like a sailor, and then I'll do stuff, other things that look spiritual or not, or whatever. I mean, I think God created every one of us, and he gets a kick out of us, and he's not up there. He put us on this earth for this experience, and maybe we are doing it very badly, but he loves us. Think about your own kids or your own family. your heart breaks when it's not going well for a family member. Why would we be different than God?
Do you think, how we said we watch our grandchildren and we were so serious with our children and our
Hmm.
grandchildren are like, they'll survive.
They'll get out of
Do you
this.
think we amuse God sometimes with
Oh,
all of our
he's
drama and our,
totally
our
laughing.
stress? Because some of it is when I get back into that space of knowing, it's just like, why did I let that upset me?
Mhm.
Why did I react like that? And we were totally into the emotions instead of the intellect. And that's why I love the labyrinth work, because it intertwines the emotions and the intellect. And we're all a work in progress. Nobody's perfect, and God knows I'm not perfect.
Oh yeah, I'm a train wreck.
And that's okay, because
I'm sure he's laughing. And
I'm sure.
And I even think he doesn't take serious the things that we think. Like, I don't know, I said to one of my kids, they were talking about something bad that happened, and I says, well, maybe dying's just part of that experience. And as it came out of my mouth, I thought, that's what God thinks. We take it like, oh, it's so horrible, and we're gonna miss that person.
Yeah.
But
Mm-mm.
he, she, whoever is gonna go cross over to the other side and learn. And
they've completed whatever needed to be completed here, and it's kind of like the graduation. But our society has taught us it's just the worst thing that can happen. But I tell you what, if I was being tortured or something, I would certainly pray for death.
oh yeah, kill me, get
or
it over with.
caught, somewhere. I would pray for that,
Mm-hmm.
because that is the reprieve from something even worse. And but then I'm always warped, so I don't know. A lot of people don't.
I feel that way.
Take what you want, throw the rest out. I don't care. It won't hurt my feelings anymore.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, and I was thinking about what you said about grandkids versus kids. I know I said to one of my daughters once, none of this, that what you're doing is going to work. Okay.
It's not.
Just forget about it and love
Just
them.
let the little heathens go run free.
And because the one thing I think I did wrong, I mean, a lot, but the one that probably would have made the most difference, I was so busy disciplining and
Right.
making sure everything was lining up.
Perfect. Yes.
I didn't love
That everybody
them.
else thought my children was special, and
Yeah.
I wanted them to be that little showcase of who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I probably warped them, but my kids did turn out pretty great.
Mine are all pretty good too, but I did
But-
think I wished I'd have loved,
Yeah.
and I loved them, but showed
Take
them
more time.
love.
Take more time.
And I had one that I adopted that
Had
was
experiences.
a mess. He was highly abused when I got him, and he was very acting out, and I was very disciplinarian. And I look back at him and I think, if I'd have just hugged and loved on him, I wouldn't have had half the problems I had.
I know.
But
Anyway.
being a crone has its advantages.
I know. I love being a crone. There's no way I'm going back. So.
Me neither.
Anyway, I hope that we entertained you for a minute and you learned a little bit of something that you can take home and take out into the world with you. This is Mary.
This is Cathy.
And we're with Magic Chatter.
Yep, the crones.
The crones. Have a great weekend.
You too.